What do special forces teams, elite consulting firms, and top entrepreneurs all have in common? They have their own operating system that helps them pull off really difficult jobs. I'm Mark Wales. I've worked in McKinsey & Company, a consulting firm, and special forces and startups. I'm going to share my own insights and my own operating system with you guys. It's elite high-performance habits. I hope you enjoy it. So I served about 16 years in the Australian Army. After I got out, I went to a top business school in the US and joined McKinsey & Company. They're a really great consulting firm. While I was working there, I noticed certain threads that ran through high-performing teams. I'd seen it in the Army and I was seeing in the corporate sector. What I figured out that these series of kind of operating values and capabilities are things that can help you no matter what job you're trying to pull off in life. So I'm going to share with you my own process that I use, and I've used it for a lot of different things, writing good books, trying to get into films, trying to basically create things. So I'm going to share those insights with you now. Why does this matter? I think it matters because these insights will not only make you better at your job, they'll actually make you better at life. They'll stop you getting burned out. They'll keep you focused on something that's really exciting. They'll keep your relationships great, and they'll keep your health in a really good place. Just makes life more exciting and better. So I hope you enjoy the tips. So the 3 steps I have for high performance habits, I really just narrow it down to these 3 because I think they're the most important. Number 1 is a really strong sense of mission clarity. You need to know exactly what it is you want to achieve. You need a team that understands that mission as well, and you all have to drive towards that one mission. It's got to be your North Star that guides all your actions. It takes all your resources, and you have to drive in that one direction. So when I talk about mission focus, there's really a couple of areas I talk about. One is that mission clarity at the very start. You've got to be able to define your mission, understand what it is. In the military, we used to say that clearly and upfront so that no matter how much fog or friction or chaos there was on the battlefield, you could always head towards that one goal. In McKinsey & Company, problem definition is one of the first steps they have in their special 7-step problem-solving approach. So being clear about what your mission is so important. Because if you don't get that part right, everything that comes after it is a waste of effort. Second part to mission focus is boundaries. You've got to set the parameters that you're going to operate in. And they're generally related to time and resourcing. So you need to know how much time you've got to achieve your mission. You might set yourself a goal of 12 months and you can reverse engineer your time from there. I also put boundaries around how I operate during the day. I set aside time for my self-care, which includes diet, exercise, and rest. I set aside time for deep work, which are the big kind of cognitively heavy tasks that you do. I try and do them early in the day. And then I have a block for more rote tasks in the second half of the day. And then I have my off windows, right, where I don't do any work in those particular areas. That's all for rest and recovery. So setting those boundaries and having really clear boundaries that you understand yourself and ones that you can share with your team is important because that will stop burnout. If you're available 24/7 in your job, you will get used 24/7. So establish those boundaries, employ self-care, look after yourself, and get your jobs done in that time. A third part under mission focus is prioritizing. So now that you know your mission, now that you know what your parameters are, then you start to prioritize what your tasks are. For this, really focus on what I call big rocks. So you're going to have probably a couple of major tasks that you do each day that are really going to drive all your effectiveness forward. Look at your to-do list, try and figure out what those big tasks are and just focus on those, and they should be tied directly to your mission. This will keep you focused on not the small things that consume our time and busyness, but really being effective as possible. There's nothing worse than spending too much time and energy on things that don't matter. Concentrate on what matters. So the reason this step 1 is so important, it keeps you on track and it prevents you getting burned out. You're not trying to do everything. You're not trying to boil the ocean, as they say. You're just concentrating on your job. Step 2 is build your execution system. For me, there's just a couple of frameworks I use here. One is I really build my mission expertise or my mission knowledge. And this is just absorbing as much information about the job as you can. I'll give you an example. I actually wanted to write a memoir. I wanted to do a good job of it. Wrote this during COVID. I wanted it to be a good story. I'm only going to write a memoir once. So I spent a lot of time reading about story structure, memoir structure, sentences, writing inspiration. I read Stephen King's books. I looked at a masterclass online about how to write. I looked at YouTube articles. I listened to podcasts. This is just developing that knowledge base that you need to try and achieve this mission. So do that as much as you can. Build that knowledge base. For me, it's a good litmus test because if I'm still excited about the mission, I know I'm on the right track. Second part to this is strengthen your planning. So with this, I try and conduct, I guess, pre-mortems. I try and figure out what's going to go wrong with this plan. We call it wargaming in the military. I look at this plan, so I want to write a memoir. What's going to go wrong with this? Well, the worst thing I can do is write a terrible story or not deliver it. So I'd figure out ways that I could try and basically reverse engineer my time management to make sure if I hit a certain word count every day, over 6 months, I would have a book. So that's just one example of how you can use your pre-mortems to prevent yourself from mission failure. Third part of this is executing. You've actually got to go and do the work. And here, just have that strong bias to action. You're not going to be fully ready to do the work, but just step into it every day. Understand you're going to get things wrong and fail. It's all just part of the process. And finally, when you do fail, have a bit of a process for learning from it. In the Army, they do after action reviews. So we would sit down after every job. We'd talk about what we're trying to get to this point. We only got to here, like why is there a gap? And it was all about trying to find solutions to fill those gaps. You're not beating yourself up. It's just taking that opportunity to learn and change your process as you go. So build your execution system. Make sure you've got that knowledge base. Make sure you have the processes to strengthen your plans, execute well, and learn from your failures as you go. Which takes us to step 3. And this ties closely into a video I did recently about self-care. And this phase is important because when you're going through with a really high level of mission focus and you're executing hard and you're working in a team or you're leading a team or you're working on your own, you need to invest in yourself. You need to build that resilience foundation or that resilience shield, as my mates from the Resilience Shield say. And for me, I focus on 3 things in this: diet, exercise, and rest. With diet, I try and clean my eating up, try and eat lean foods, leafy greens, try and reduce my sugar and alcohol to just try and keep the whole body healthy. I try and exercise. I try and get a couple of sessions in a week. If you can combine that with games or sport or something else that's social, excellent, even better. With rest, I try and get 7 to 9 hours sleep a night. I'll give you an example of this. When I was writing and I had a writing schedule going, I would carve out 2 hours in the morning. That was for training, trying to eat well, just spending time on myself because I'd gained heaps of weight during COVID. And then I'd spend about 3 hours writing. So within 5 hours, first 5 hours of the day, I'd done a bulk of the really heavy work that I had to do. Again, this ties back to point number 1. If you look after these things, it will prevent burnout, right? It will keep you performing at a high level. That self-care will let you work at your highest and will stop you from being burned out altogether. Because you can do this, you can sprint for a while, but you can't do it for years at a time. Interesting tip, you can combine these to form you can do one activity that can tick several of these self-care boxes at once. I'll give you an example. I started to do surfing as part of my recovery when I was coming out of the Army. It was a great activity. I was with my mates. I was somewhere exciting. I was learning a new skill. I was getting fitness. And for me, it was such a thrill. Loved it. Still enjoy surfing to this day. Played a big part of my recovery. Also, just recently started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Again, it's something a little bit scary. It's a skill. It's something you got to learn every day. I get beaten all the time. Doesn't faze me because I get all those boxes ticked. I get socialization, I get a good sense of purpose, and I get exercise from it. So if you can combine these things, great. These processes, having that mission focus, having that kind of execution system, and looking after self-care, I really just apply those 3 things to every task I do. And for me, if I'm checking off all those things at once, my chances of being successful in that mission are much higher. I don't always get it, but it really does help. And I've done this with writing books, applying myself to try and get into films, applying myself to try and get into reality TV. The system does work, but I guess the point is be deliberate about what you're trying to achieve. And these things really are high performance habits that can unlock your best potential. So really hope you enjoy it. My next video is going to be about how I apply this exact system to writing a book, right, which is a big job. So hope you enjoy it. See you at the next video.